It's a first for New York's Metropolitan Opera, and a first for trumpeter and composer Terence Blanchard. Sunday Morning contributor Hua Hsu has their story.
The audience was just lavishing the performers with applause after the step performance. It was like 5 minutes of continuous ovation.
Yes, I know those guys are getting the cramp, man, holding that position for 5 minutes. What a moment. What a moment for people to see themselves. And they've never seen that on the stage at the Met.
The Metropolitan Opera in New York opened its season with a production by jazz trumpeter and composer Terence Blanchard. It's an interpretation of the memoir written by Sunday Morning contributor Charles Blow. He describes his anguish growing up in small-town Louisiana in the 1970s and 80s. What drew you to Charles Blow's story?
It was the notion of being isolated in your own community.
Blanchard, who began playing the trumpet when he was 9, related to the feeling of having a kind of dual existence.
Out in the street hanging with your friends, and then being that kid who has to break away from that and walk to the bus stop with his horn in his hand on a Saturday, wasn't a cool thing to do in my neighborhood.
You translate some of the feelings into music.
You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. While I was working on it, man, there were many moments in my solitude where I was just in tears.
A boy of peculiar grace.
There once was a boy of peculiar grace. That line gets me every time.
Terence Oliver Blanchard was raised in New Orleans in a home that was filled with opera. Your father was a huge opera fan. What did opera represent to him?
Sophistication, highest level of art. Whenever there was a masterpiece performance on PBS, he said, "Hey, come here. Listen. See, now that's music.
Blanchard's passion? Jazz. Today, he's a 6-time Grammy winner and also a 2-time Oscar-nominated film composer. He's been working on movie soundtracks since the late 80s. First, as a trumpeter on films like Do the Right Thing. How did you and Spike Lee begin working together?
I was just hired as a session player, and I sat down at the piano and started playing. Spike walked by and heard it. He goes, "Man, what's that?" I said, "Oh, it's just something I'm working on." And then he goes, "Can I use that?"
Want to hear this one first or one before?
Yeah, let me hear the one before, since I remember this one.
Blanchard has composed the scores for 15 of Spike Lee's movies. When did you feel like you were a composer?
When we did Malcolm X, it was the first time that I felt like I was connected emotionally to something that I was writing for film. That film, I knew had to be powerful.
Amateurish.
Amateurish, right.
This ledger book from the early 1900s contains the Met's internal notations about opera submissions.
Uninteresting, right? Not suitable for the Metropolitan.
It's funny that they take themselves so seriously that he writes out Metropolitan each time.
I know. Yeah, thank you.
There's not that much space. In its 138 years, America's leading opera house and largest performing arts institution had never staged an opera by a black composer.
The arts are supposed to be the things that bring us together, that throw away all of those notions of bigotry and intolerance, right? So it breaks my heart to think that William Grant Still approached the Met and was turned away.
William Grant Still, known as the Dean of African American Composers, submitted 3 operas to the Met over a 20-year span. In the 20s and 30s, what kind of opportunities existed for William Grant Still?
None. Everything was measured by what happened here at the Met. This is the place that makes the statement for the rest of the world.
These are all people whose works didn't make it from that stage. And Mrs. Horatio Parker, Mrs. Frances Thurber,
Right.
Gertrude Old Thomas, William Brand Still, women, African Americans, people wanted to perform here. They saw this as the pinnacle, and the commentary is just so dismissive.
So dismissive.
Do you think there's some racial component to this rejection?
Do you think there's racial component to this? Listen, man, there's misogyny all over this too, with all of these women that were rejected, right?
But this time, it was the Met that reached out to Blanchard.
Called me up and said, we want to put your opera on at the Met. Because I'm like, did this really just happen? Then all of a sudden, boom, and it blows up and takes off like a runaway freight train.
Sometimes you gotta just leave it.
Performances of his opera quickly sold out.
And that should be a big lesson to arts organizations around the country. It's time. It's time for us to move on, you know? Nobody loves classics more than me. Listen, I'm a jazz musician who loves Bird, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, but I'm not trying to be them. I'm trying to find the sound for my generation.
In reviews, the production has been praised as being unlike any other opera. For Terence Blanchard, it was an opportunity to take risks. I haven't been to the opera since, a third grade field trip.
Oh, wow, okay.
And there were times when my ears would catch up to what was going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, did they just sing a profanity?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's not like we're trying to be profane for the sake of being profane. Just kind of ramp the energy up.
Now that you've caught the opera bug, are you working on another one?
Well, that's the thing. The night of the gala, man, on behalf of the Met, we like to commission Terence to write another opera for us. I was like, whoa, okay. I just want to get a nap in between, if I could.